A stratified model of art history from cave walls to quantum states. Chapter 5. The Digital Layer. Image as Data. Every layer we have looked at so far had one thing in common. The image was always attached to something physical in a direct and visible way. Pigment bonded to limestone, oil paint dried on canvas, light left a chemical mark on a coated surface, frames of celluloid held frozen moments of time. In each case, if you looked closely enough, you could see, or at least imagine, the physical substance that the image was made of. The digital layer breaks this connection entirely. A digital image is not made of pigment or chemistry or celluloid. It is made of numbers, and that single fact changes almost everything about what an image is, how it can be used, and what it means. What a digital image actually is. When a digital camera takes a photograph, light passes through the lens and strikes a sensor. The sensor divides the image into a grid of tiny units, pixels, from picture elements. Each pixel records the color and brightness of the light that fell on it and converts that information into a number. A typical smartphone photograph might contain 12 million pixels or more. Each one is defined by 3 numbers, representing the amount of red, green, and blue light, giving a total of perhaps 36 million numbers for a single image. That grid of numbers is the photograph, not a representation of it, not a copy of it. The numbers themselves are the image. When you look at a photograph on a screen, what you are seeing is a display device reading those numbers and turning them back into light, pixel by pixel, faster than the eye can follow. This is a fundamental change from everything that came before. A cave painting was a physical object. An oil painting was a physical object. A photographic print was a physical object. A digital image is, at its core, an abstract mathematical structure. It has no color, no size, no visible form, until something translates it back into light for human eyes to see. The end of the original. One of the most profound consequences of turning images into numbers is what it does to the idea of an original. When a painter makes a painting, there is one original. Copies can be made, but they are always slightly different. The brushwork is different, the colors are slightly off, the texture of the paint is not quite the same. When a photographer makes a print, there may be multiple prints, but there is one negative, one physical object that all the prints come from. The idea of an original, something unique, something that carries the direct trace of its making, was central to how we understood art. Digital images have no originals in this sense. When you copy a digital file, you do not get an approximation of the original. You get an exact duplicate. Every number is copied perfectly. There is no generational loss, no degradation, no way to tell the copy from the original. In fact, the concept of an original becomes almost meaningless. Every copy is identical to every other copy. Every version is simply another instance of the same set of numbers. This has enormous implications for art, for commerce, for law, and for culture. It is why music and film industries struggled so dramatically with digital distribution. It is why the concept of the NFT, a digital certificate of authenticity, was invented, to artificially recreate scarcity in a world where perfect copying is trivially easy. It is why questions of authorship, ownership, and authenticity have become so complicated in the digital age. The image, once fixed to a unique physical object, had become something that could exist in 1,000 identical places simultaneously. The screen as universal surface. With the digital layer, something else changed. The surface that displays images became universal. In the cave, images were on limestone walls. In the Renaissance, they were on canvas. In the 19th century, they were on photographic paper or metal plates. In the cinema, they were projected on a white screen. Each medium had its own specific surface, with its own physical properties and its own relationship to the images it carried. The digital screen replaced all of these, or rather, it became a surface that could simulate all of these and more. The same screen that shows you a photograph can show you a film, a painting, a text document, a video game, a live conversation. All of these are, at the level of the technology, the same thing: grids of pixels displaying numbers as light. This convergence was a genuinely new development in the history of images. For the first time, all visual media shared a single physical platform. The differences between a photograph, a film, a painting, and a drawing, differences that previously had been rooted in entirely different physical materials and processes, became, in the digital world, differences only of software and convention. The screen is not a passive surface the way a cave wall or a canvas is. It does not hold images permanently. It refreshes itself dozens of times per second, constantly recalculating and redisplaying. The image does not adhere to it the way pigment adheres to rock. It is more like a window through which numbers become visible, temporarily, continuously, endlessly.
Images that operate in the world. Here is something that may seem surprising at first. Digital images are not just things to look at. They are also things that do things. Because a digital image is a set of numbers, it can be processed by software. Facial recognition systems can analyze a photograph and identify the person in it. Medical imaging software can scan an X-ray and detect signs of disease. Satellite image analysis can monitor changes in a forest or a city over time. Security cameras can track movement and trigger alarms. In all of these cases, the image is not primarily being looked at by a human eye. It is being read by a machine, analyzed, and used to make decisions. The image has become an input, a piece of data that drives a process. This is a genuinely new role for images in the world. A cave painting could inspire awe or communicate knowledge, but it could not trigger an alarm or unlock a door. A digital image can. The image has acquired a kind of agency, a capacity to act in the world that no previous layer in the history of art could have imagined. This development raises real questions about privacy, power, and the nature of surveillance that go well beyond the history of art. But within our model, it represents something important. The digital layer is the first in which images become operational, part of the infrastructure of daily life, not just objects of contemplation. The artist as system designer. For artists, the digital layer brought both extraordinary freedom and a new kind of challenge. The freedom was obvious. Digital tools made it possible to manipulate images in ways that would have taken weeks or months with traditional techniques in a matter of minutes. Colors could be adjusted, elements added or removed, compositions rearranged. The gap between intention and execution narrowed dramatically. But the deeper change was more fundamental. In all the previous layers, the artist's primary act was making, applying pigment, exposing film, printing photographs. In the digital layer, the artist's primary act increasingly became designing systems, writing code that generates images according to rules, building algorithms that produce visual output based on data, creating software that responds to user input or environmental conditions. The artist who writes a program that generates thousands of unique images, each one different, each one following the same underlying rules, is doing something that has no real precedent in the history of art. The hand is still involved, but it is operating at a different level, not moving the brush, but designing the logic that moves the brush.
This shift opened up entirely new possibilities for art and entirely new questions about authorship, originality, and what it means to make something. Everything is still there underneath. As always in the stratified model, the digital layer did not erase the layers beneath it. Painting continued and continues today, practiced by artists around the world who find in the physical act of applying paint to canvas something that no digital tool can replicate. Photography continued, both digital and analog, with film photography experiencing a genuine revival among photographers who value its particular qualities of texture and light. Cinema continued, now distributed digitally, but still following the grammar of editing and montage that was established in the early 20th century. The digital layer added new possibilities. It changed the context in which all the older layers operated. It put new pressures on them and opened new questions for them, but it did not make them obsolete. The limestone is still there beneath the canvas. The canvas is still there beneath the photograph. The photograph is still there beneath the film. And all of them are still there beneath the digital image, not as historical curiosities, but as living practices, still in use, still capable of things that newer technologies cannot do. From image to information. We end this chapter with a question that will become central to the next two layers. If a digital image is fundamentally a set of numbers, and if those numbers can be stored, copied, transmitted, and processed by machines, then in what sense is it still an image at all? Is it a picture that happens to be stored as data, or is it data that happens to look like a picture? The answer this essay suggests is both, and the tension between those two descriptions is one of the defining tensions of contemporary visual culture. An image on a screen looks like a picture. It has colors and shapes and compositions. It communicates visually, the way all images have always communicated. But underneath its surface, it is a mathematical structure, a grid of numbers processed by algorithms and displayed by hardware. The visible is an interface. Beneath the interface is something that has more in common with a spreadsheet than with a painting. Understanding this does not make digital images less beautiful or less powerful, but it does reveal that we are now living inside a layer of art history that is genuinely different from all the ones that came before, a layer in which the material of images is not pigment or light or celluloid, but pure information. And information, as we will see in the next chapter, has its own deepest layer, the binary digit, the 0 and the 1, the minimal difference that can be registered and stored.